Welcome to the With Mama Bear podcast, episode 23. I'm your host, Sarah Yacoub. Today's topic, Can You Hear Me Now? This title will probably get recycled down the road, as living in the 30th Assembly District in Wisconsin means no shortage of drop phone calls and repeatedly asking, Can you hear me now? Reliable, accessible phone service and broadband continues to be an issue for rural Wisconsin, and Republican inaction is starting to feel like a giant conspiracy to keep us in the Stone Age. So far as conspiracies go, this one isn't too wild. Wisconsin Republicans get a lot of success from their false narrative talking points in rural Wisconsin, where those same lame, dishonest efforts fail miserably in places with access to the counter-narratives, or rather, the truth. For example, Northwestern Wisconsin is still a place where Republican politicians can fundraise with extremist ex-Sheriff David Clark and not have it be the end of their political career. Those on the outside looking in raise their eyebrows and are baffled. How do you not know how extreme and harmful that guy is? How does a place that loves Trump and his wall still like someone who was involved in defrauding those who donated their hard-earned money for a wall? So yes, we will return to the topic of our existence as mushrooms kept in the dark by those in a position to let in some sunlight another day. For today's purposes, Can You Hear Me Now is my battle cry for the road that has been working towards integrity and accountability within our local government. More specifically, despite the fact that Shannon Zimmerman is not a qualified elector to vote in or represent the 30th Assembly District, despite that it's not a well-kept secret, is a matter of his own sworn statements and public record, despite that it has been going on for 4 long years, getting those in a position to do something about it to care has been, well, exhausting. I give credit to those who paved and walked this road before me. I certainly didn't pave it. Those who fought for right in the face of wrong 4 years ago and ever since get the credit here. What are the barriers in place to accountability or honest handling of the situation? Well, until 2018, we had a Republican Attorney General who wasn't much interested in holding his fellow Republican in the legislature accountable. As of 2019, while we have a new Attorney General, getting the appropriate words in the appropriate form to the appropriate audience is not as simple a process as it should be. Given the corruption of Walker's administration, the history of good old boys politics around here locally, and efforts to stand up for right in the face of wrong that went nowhere, there's a lot of understandable learned helplessness, an attitude of why try? Why exert the energy when all signs suggest the issue won't be handled honestly or resolved as a function of law? What do bullies and corruption have in common? Both thrive in silence and hopelessness. Where there is no hope of things ever being different, the bullies and corruption can carry on with minimal inconveniences or interruptions. For better or worse, I'm not wired to cower to bullies. Come what may, but no, I'm not going to stick my head in the sand for more of the same, contrary to law, fair play, and to the detriment of our community and future of our children. During this past election cycle, my team talked about Shannon not being a qualified elector to vote in or represent the 30th Assembly District during the campaign. Because my candidacy was about the policies and leadership that I would bring to the state assembly, and not the fraud of our current representative, it was hard to talk about Shannon's voter and election fraud without that taking over or defining the campaign or my candidacy. One would think it's actually easier to run against someone who is dishonest and or corrupt as compared to someone who just has different policy perspectives on an issue. In fact, it isn't. Where your opponent is bad enough, running against them is actually harder because your message as the challenger very quickly sounds like, quote, vote for me because the other guy is awful. Your message, policy perspectives, and plans for better drown out to efforts to raise awareness on the dishonesty and corruption of the opponent. What about the option of just not talking about a politician like Shannon's dishonesty and corruption? People have tried, and that approach fails miserably. Where no one talks about who these gluttonous fat cats really are, their election time propaganda carries the day. After the last election, how many people actually think Shannon Zimmerman is a friend of public schools and or of lowering taxes for working families? Those are all lies, but who's counting? During the election, the issue of Zimmerman's election fraud was covered competently by the Milwaukee Sentinel and Up North News. However, between paywalls and inaccessible internet throughout the 30th, and the fact that so many in rural Wisconsin do not get their news online, that coverage only went so far. Our local newspaper covered it, well, sort of. Without any actual investigative journalism or context to put Shannon's self-serving statements into context, it was confusing at best and certainly didn't move anyone closer to truth on the issue. On Sunday, December 13th, 2020, I decided to post a series of tweets laying out the tip of the iceberg that is Shannon Zimmerman's election and voter fraud. Inspired by the disingenuity of Trump's ridiculous lawsuits and the equally absurd mental gymnastics on the part of Republicans like Dean Knutson to try to validate Trump's disgraceful attempt at a war on our democracy, inspired by the bogus claims of Wisconsin GOP that they truly care about election and voter fraud, I decided to lay it all out for them. You want election and voter fraud? Here you go. I dare you to not look away. I will now read my tweets in the order that they appear online. Per Wis state statute, one can only claim and receive the lottery tax credit for one's primary residence. The law specifically excludes rental properties and any dwelling that is not one's primary residence. As a matter of public record, as reflected on the Pierce County, Wisconsin website, tax records reflect @Rep. Zimmerman has only ever claimed W10887 875th Avenue, Town of Clifton, as his primary residence in 2017, 2018, 2019, and now 2020. W10887 875th Avenue, Town of Clifton, is not in the 30th Assembly District. @Rep. Zimmerman is not a qualified elector of the 30th Assembly District, making voting in and representing the 30th AD voter and election fraud. Shannon uses his son's duplex 429 Jefferson in the city of River Falls to vote in and represent the 30th Assembly District. He says he lives in a room in the basement. Since getting elected in 2016, @Rep. Zimmerman has never claimed 429 Jefferson Street, River Falls, as his primary residence per Wisconsin property tax records, which are public record. Shannon's son, Nick, lives in the duplex with his girlfriend and sometimes his son. Nick is not only a material witness, but an attorney. If asked under oath or as part of an investigation whether his dad lives in his basement, Nick would have a choice. Either he is honest and says no, his dad does not live in his basement, or he lies and his law license is on the line. @Rep. Zimmerman evidently doesn't care and continues to put his son in this position. So far as I can tell from reviewing public records, to date, no investigations have involved interviewing Nick as a material witness. There is currently a complaint pending with the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Commissioner member Dean Knutson is the former mayor of Hudson, the largest city in the 30th AD. Dean held @Rep. Zimmerman's seat in the state assembly prior to Shannon. W10887 875th Avenue, Town of Clifton, is adjacent to @Rep. Zimmerman's winery, a location frequently used for local Republican events and fundraisers. Dean Knutson has donated at least $1,500 to @Rep. Zimmerman over the following dates: October 13, 2016, May 8, 2017, June 29, 2018, September 30th, 2019. Here's Dean at a Republican fundraiser at @Rep. Zimmerman's Clifton Winery. Yes, the one adjacent to his out-of-district home. Below that tweet is a picture from Shannon Zimmerman's campaign Facebook depicting Dean Knutson with a microphone at the winery with Shannon in the background. Caption reads, "Last night, we had a great turnout for the fundraiser. Thank you to everyone who came out to support our campaign. And a special thanks to Sheila Harsdorf, Dean Knutson, and Bill Burnt for their continued support. #KeepWisconsinRed. It's dated September 24th, 2018. Calling on @Dean Knutson to recuse himself from @Rep. Zimmerman's pending 5.05 complaint with @Wisconsin Elections, he either knows or should know Shannon is not a qualified elector of the 30th Assembly District. If Dean is claiming he didn't know, then we have issues of competence and fitness for public service. If @Dean Knutson, as I suspect, is well aware that @Rep. Zimmerman does not live in his kid's basement, his inaction and continued support of someone actively committing election and voter fraud speaks to his integrity and is or should be disqualifying for public service. Wisconsin used to be known for #GoodGovernment. What a slap in the face to the legacy of former Governor Lafayette, #FightingBob, for @Dean Knutson and @Rep. Zimmerman to make a mockery of our laws and act as though rules don't apply to them. Calling on @Rep. Zimmerman to #resign and not be sworn in to a new term next month. He continues to not be a qualified elector of the 30th Assembly District and has no business voting in or representing it. As questions about the law and legality arose in response to this thread, I picked back up the following day with the following. Questions arising about residency requirements for WIS State Assembly. @Rep Zimmerman needed to be a qualified elector at the time he took office in January of 2017. This has been going on for 4 years. I then posted a picture which depicts Wisconsin candidate eligibility requirements and demonstrates that for state representative, one has to be a qualified elector at the time of taking office, per Article 4, Section 6 of the Wisconsin Constitution, as well as interpretive decisions coming out of the Attorney General's Office of Wisconsin. What does it mean to be a qualified elector of a given legislative district? Qualified elector is defined in Wisconsin Statute Section 6.02 as a U.S. citizen, 18 years of age or older, who has resided in the election district for at least 28 consecutive days before any election at which he or she offers to vote, and who is not disqualified by virtue of one or more of the impediments described in Wisconsin Statute Section 6.03. In a nutshell, you have to live in the district in which you represent. Calling on @Wisconsin DOJ to investigate, confirm the obvious, and commence action under Chapter 784 for a writ of quo warranto to restrain @Rep Zimmerman from assuming office. Calling on @Speaker Voss to be honest and find that Shannon is not qualified to be seated, or to recuse himself. What does the law have to say about all of this? Fun fact, if you go to myvote.wi.gov and search @Rep Zimmerman and his DOB of 03/15/1982. Side note, that's a typo. I made Zimmerman 10 years younger than he is. It should read a date of birth of March 15th, 1972. Okay, back to my tweet. You'll find his voting history using 429 Jefferson Street, River Falls, his son's duplex. By my count, he voted 10 times using 429 Jefferson while in the state assembly. 2/21/17, 12/19/17, 1/16/18, 2/20/18, 4/3/18, 8/14/18, 11/6/18, 4/7/2020, 8/11/2020, and 11/3/2020. For Wisconsin Statute Section 12.60(1)(a), violations of 12.13(1) are Class I felonies. What is Wisconsin Statute 12.13? Election fraud. What is 12.13(1)? Whoever intentionally does any of the following violates this chapter. (a) Votes at any election or meeting if that person does not have the necessary elector qualifications and residency requirements. Per 12.60(1)(a), knowingly falsifying any part of one's nomination papers and or declaration of candidacy with statute section 12.13(3)(a) is a Class I felony. What is 12.13(3)(a)? Prohibited acts. No person may falsify any information in respect to or fraudulently deface or destroy a certificate of nomination, nomination paper, declaration of candidacy, or petition for an election, including a recall petition or petition for a referendum, or file or receive for filing a certificate of nomination, nomination paper, declaration of candidacy, or any such petition, knowing any part of it is falsely made. Side note, it means that you can't lie on your nomination papers or your declarations of candidacy. In Wisconsin, one Class I felony carries a penalty of a fine not more than $10,000 and or imprisonment not longer than 3 years and 6 months. Ready for the gravity of exposure of @Rep Zimmerman's fraud? Excluding @Rep Zimmerman's 2016 run for state assembly and 2018 state senate, 2 campaigns for state assembly equals 2 declarations of candidacy, 400 to 800 nomination signatures. 1 page holds 10 signatures max. Each page/declaration requires certification of address. Lying about it is a Class I felony. Assuming @Rep Zimmerman obtained the maximum number of nomination signatures, a traditional power move to signify strength, that's 800 signatures and a minimum of 80 individual pages. Each nomination paper fraudulently lists his address as 429 Jefferson. A number of variables for exact exposure aside, we're talking a rough ballpark of 288 years imprisonment and or a fine of $800,000. And that's not including restitution. @Rep Zimmerman should also have to cover the costs of any special election necessitated by his fraud. Taxpayers should not have to pick up that tab. Good thing he's a millionaire. See, kids? At the end of the day, crime doesn't pay. P.S. That ballpark estimate of exposure of 288 years imprisonment and or $800,000 in fines only covers the fraud associated with @Rep Zimmerman's nomination papers and declarations of candidacy. The voter fraud carries another 36 years imprisonment and or $100,000 more in fines. PPS. Now throw in the fraud associated with his run for state senate and the federal crimes/penalties to which he's exposed. So yeah, at Rep. Zimmerman, it's time to #resign. To date, this series of tweets has garnered the attention of upwards of 50,000 people. To those out there who are in a position to do something about this, can you hear me now? Episode 24 tomorrow. See you there.